Today we're going to be ranking 30 Premier League players aged 21 or under that have had significant impacts on their side or have hopes for huge futures. Now, as you can see, there's a few names that I haven't been able to include, but I'm thinking of doing a part 2 for this. So if there's a player you want to see in part 2 that isn't on this list today, let me know in the comments below. Okay, let's start with Jack Hinchelwood at Brighton. Mr. Versatile, Mr. Consistent really for his age, a player that really flies under the radar because he's operated as a left back, defensive midfielder, central midfielder, a right back in Fabian Hertzler's system so far this season. I think he's taken decent strides forward. For me, he would slot nicely into solid career. I expect him to stay at Brighton for a considerable amount of time. He's one of their academy graduates and a bit of a shining star for the club. What about Kushinov then? Now, he's only recently joined the Premier League. He's still just 20 years old, and it was a fairly substantial fee when he joined from Lille. And let's not forget the first couple of minutes of his debut Premier League game were very much in the deep end. He struggled, didn't he? And I think in a lot of fans' eyes, they're using that as a stick to beat him still. When in reality, over the last 2 or 3 games, he's been really impressive. Sure, his defensive positioning could probably be worked on a little bit and his ball playing ability, but there are no doubts about it. He has the physical attributes to operate in this Manchester City side. He is rapid. He's been fully thrown in at the deep end by Pep Guardiola. There's no doubt about that. Against the likes of Mbappe and Vinicius, you are always going to have a tough time at 20 years old. There was big expectation when he arrived from Lille. Newcastle tracked him for a significant amount of time. I think very much he could be a Premier League monster soon under Pep. Next up, we've got Mikey Moore, who is still just 17 years old, one of the youngest players on this list, but has had a big impact for Spurs in very limited minutes in the Europa League when he's come on off the bench. In particular, he has affected games. We know how good he is at carrying the ball over large distances. As you can see, over 5 progressive carries per 90. Really impressive at going past players as well. His dribble percentage is particularly high. Very raw still, there's no doubt about that. But he's one of the youngest players on this entire list. To even be getting Premier League, Europa League minutes at 17 is incredibly impressive. So I think I would probably veer towards putting him in Premier League monster soon. I know Spurs fans would have him in future superstar. I've not yet seen that future superstar level, and that's purely because he hasn't got the minutes, really, comparatively to some of the other players on this list who are, closing on 2,000 Premier League minutes this season. We haven't seen that from Mikey Moore. I think this will be a big player for Spurs in the future. Patrick Dorgu obviously joined Manchester United just a month ago in a big pressure environment. I've actually been really impressed with Patrick Dorgu. I think his ball carrying ability is excellent. Still got to understand that position a little bit more. He's inverting into the 10 space quite regularly under Ruben Amorim, and obviously had a disastrous 45 minutes against Ipswich. You can't get away from that. But if you take it to the week before against Everton, he put up the second most touches of any player for Manchester United, behind only Bruno Fernandes. He's been quite influential in the very limited minutes we've seen. I've been really impressed with him. I think his physicality means that he could well end up being a bit of a monster for Manchester United, and I do believe he's got the opportunity to lock that left wing back slot down for a significant amount of time. Okay, next up we've got 6'5", 19-year-old centre-back Dean Howson. What is there this guy can't do? He's got a £55 million release clause that becomes active this summer. We're talking about one of the best progressive passes for his age in Europe. Certainly amongst centre-backs in the Premier League, which is ridiculous to say for a 19-year-old. He wins loads of aerial duels for a player that is as slight as him because of his height. And yet, as an out-and-out defender, is very, very silky, but it's not the most impressive thing about him. For me, this is the most impressive thing about him, his ability to step out of the line, his ability to progress the ball with his carrying. We've seen him score really good goals when he was playing in Italy. At Bournemouth, he has made this league look like a piece of piss. He's so comfortable in possession, out of possession. He's formed a great partnership with Zabarnyi, who's also a young centre-back. It's not always easy to make 2 young centre-backs work. They have made it look easy. For me, there's no doubt here this is a future superstar. He will get a massive move in the summer to one of Europe's most elite clubs. I can imagine Real Madrid being very interested in Dean Howson. Matheus Fernandes has probably been Southampton's best player this season. We've obviously got Tyler Dibbling to talk about as well. But whenever I watch him, he carries the ball really nicely. His progressive carry numbers, his dribble success percentage are particularly high. And in a really, really bad Southampton team, like maybe the worst Premier League team of all time, or at least alongside Derby County, he has stood out and I expect him to stay in the Premier League given his age. Let's put him in solid career for now. Lenny Yoro I've been really impressed with as well. I know he had the one poor game against Southampton, which consistently gets highlighted against Sulemana, but Sulemana can do that to players. He has the ability to just absolutely dominate a wing. And Lenny Yoro was getting exposed in that wide channel. Since then, I actually think he's been quite nicely suited to the left-sided centre-back role. A little bit like Howson. Very impressive stepping out of the back line. He's actually got a really nice touch and turn. And when he goes almost on these sort of underlapping runs that you sometimes see him do, it's actually quite effective. He's very athletic, calm and composed in possession. For a 19-year-old, I think you have got a future superstar on your hands here. I know that people at home will be screaming, Manchester United bias, Manchester United... Probably. But I love him. Tyler Dibbling, who, again, is just so young. I think he will be a Premier League monster soon. At 19 years old, to have his ability at carrying the ball is just so impressive. But I also think his frame actually helps him because he's quite large for a player of his age. The ability to drive past people means that they can't pull you back. They can't get back onto the ball. He's in the top 2% of wingers in Europe's top 5 leagues this season for dribbles resulting in a shot inside the box. He's got very tidy feet. He'll definitely be staying in the Prem. Mathys Tel, I think he's done okay since he's joined Tottenham. It's a big learning curve to be chucked into the Premier League mid-season, as you're seeing with a lot of players like Kushinov, like Patrick Dorgu. They're not going to immediately have 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 performances. I think the issue potentially for Spurs is that this is a big old loan fee. €10 million loan fee equates to this move costing about £700,000 a week when you add in his wages for this 6-month period. So if he chooses not to stay, it might end up proving to be quite costly if they don't end up winning the Europa League and finish 10th or whatever. But if he does choose to stay, in the long run, I see this as a massive net positive. I think he will be a really strong player for Tottenham and have an excellent career. He has to go in this category for me. Right now, I think he has a huge ceiling, Mathys Tel. He just needs to figure out exactly what his role in this side is. Okay, next up, we've got Savinho. I think he's been brilliant. I won't lie to you, I think he's been really underrated. I think he started the season a little bit slowly, but since about Christmas, every time I watch City, he looks remarkable, and that's really playing out in the numbers now. Yes, his goal-scoring numbers might not be particularly high, and his finishing at times can leave a little bit to be desired, but as an all-round profile for a winger his age, he is a scary prospect. If he can add goals to his game, where he's putting up, 6 shot-creating actions per 90, 7 progressive carries, nearly 3 take-ons a game, you could be looking at one of the best wingers in the Premier League in a couple of years. So for that reason, I genuinely think you have a future superstar on your hands here, Man City. I love a bit of the Brazilian flair to his game as well. I don't think there's enough of that in the Premier League. Far too many wingers want to cut back, play pause of football and return the ball. Savinho wants to get at his man. If he can't get on the outside, he's happy to come across the pitch, drag players with him, drag players out of position. Special talent. Next up, we've got Archie Gray, who has obviously played massively out of position this season. And I do feel really sorry for him having to be played at centre-back every single game week. But he's continued to look pretty good. And I think he's probably been one of Tottenham's best players this season. I know player of the season is going to end up going to Dejan Kulusevski, but surely Archie Gray's in maybe the 3 best players this campaign, given that he has played 40 games at fullback last year for Leeds and is probably going to play 30 games at centre-back this season for Spurs, when his actual role might end up being a central midfielder. I'm going to put him in Premier League monster. I think he has a huge future and will be, for the next 10 years, one of Tottenham's most vital players. Next up, we've got Adam Wharton, who's had some injury problems this season, but has continued his excellent progressive pass numbers. This is an outstanding facet to his game that has been a focus of it for a number of years now, but he is still in the top 2% of European midfielders for progressive passes, even with injury issues this season. Over 9 a game. They are absolutely exceptional. High shot creating action volume as well. Anybody who watched the Crystal Palace versus Aston Villa game recently will have seen Adam Wharton at his best, when he's able to take the ball first time and be so decisive with his passes through the lines. He's definitely going to be an England international in the future. For me, I'm going to have Adam Wharton in Premier League monster soon. Crystal Palace will keep hold of him this season because they can just price people out of the market, but his all-round profile matches up with some of Europe's best sides. I think there'll be teams on the continent taking real notice of Adam Wharton. We've got lewis-skelly up next, who has operated almost exclusively as a left-back this season. He's obviously had the red card issues, which have limited his game time recently, but Is he going to end up being a left back? I think he probably has more of a future as a central midfielder. He's in the top 10% of European fullbacks for take-ons. He's also in the top 20% for tackles. So his physicality really shines through. When he's able to get past you, you can't really catch him up. He's very strong for a player of his age. I think Premier League Monster is a fair enough category for him right now. He could maybe make that jump, but I'm still interested to see exactly what role he has in the future in this Arteta system. Is it going to be a left back? Is it a centre mid? I could see it being as a centre mid with his 92% pass completion this season. It's proved to me he's that good on the ball. The role in the centre of the park might suit him better. Bergvall, yeah, I think Premier League monster soon. Again, a little bit like Archie Gray, I think he's been really impressive. For an 18-year-old to come in and look like Tottenham's best central midfielder this season, obviously taking Kulusevski out of it because he's also operated as a winger, has shocked me. I was expecting perhaps Sarr to take big strides forward, Bentancur to learn this role a bit better, maybe even Basuma to improve. None of those things have really happened, and it's been up to Bergvall to carry the load. For an 18-year-old to be asked to do that in the Premier League, be as combative as he is, he's putting up excellent tackle and interception numbers. Yeah, really good work coming from Sweden and having an impact. Let's talk about Nwaneri. For me, a future superstar, even though the minutes have been very limited. Whenever you watch him, you just get the sense this kid is on a totally different planet. For a 17-year-old to be able to dominate games with his creativity, keep the ball in tight spaces with excellent body shape, his dribbling in close quarters, there don't feel like there's many flaws to his game. Now, what is going to be interesting for Nwaneri is how he fits into this side when Bukayo Saka's back. Now, does he usurp Martin Ødegaard? Do they play and be brave enough to play Nwaneri and Ødegaard in midfield, Saka on that right-hand side? Whatever the solution Arteta comes up with, Nwaneri will be able to fulfill it. I truly believe we're looking at maybe not a Ballon d'Or winner, but the sort of player that could win Arsenal a title. Harvey Elliot. Now, certainly talent-wise, he should be in here. There's no doubt talent-wise, I would have him in Premier League once soon, maybe even future superstar, because he's still only 21 years old. But I'm actually going to put him in need to see more. I'm disappointed with the amount of minutes Harvey Elliott has put up this season, particularly in the Premier League. Now, it's no fault of his own, really, because Salah has just been an absolute beast. Szoboszlai looks amazing in that more advanced role. Curtis Jones has got minutes as well. But I was kind of expecting, after the excellent pre-season he had, him to take a bit of a step forward. And I'm now looking at him as though, does his career need a move? Because it was similar issues we're seeing under Slot now as to how you fit Harvey Elliott into this system that we saw under Jurgen Klopp. How do you get him more minutes on the field? He's got the talent to be up here. I just want to see more of him. Omari Hutchinson, I think I'm going to put in solid career. I think Ipswich probably will go down this season, and I expect him to stay with them and bounce back. Physically, it is a tough jump from the Championship to the Premier League for Omari Hutchinson, but he's still so young. I think next year will be a big campaign for him in the Championship. Minter is up next. An interesting all-round profile. A profile that has kind of continued on from his excellent loan spell at Feyenoord last season. And you can see why Newcastle didn't want to lose him. These defensive numbers, his work rate off the ball, still very impressive. And I've actually been a little bit surprised that he's been able to maintain pretty high non-penalty expected goals per 90 number whilst playing for Brighton. Now, his minutes haven't been as consistent as I was expecting. But overall, I'm going to put him in Premier League monster soon. If I've got Dibbling in there, I think you've got to have Minter in there. Alejandro Garnacho, people forget, is still so young because, of course, last season he started 31 games in a row under Erik ten Hag. A lot of people would argue that's too many minutes. This season, sure, he hasn't scored as many goals as people would like to see, but he's been Manchester United's most dangerous attacking player. He's the only player in the Manchester United squad that's firing off over 3.5 shots per 90. He's third in terms of Manchester United expected goals per 90 number. I think he is going to be a Premier League monster, and you know, there was talk of him potentially leaving the club in the January window. I wasn't having any of it. I still think there is a big potential player in there. Should we talk about Carlos Baleba, who's blown everybody away this season? One of the most consistent performers in terms of minutes across this campaign, alongside the likes of Dean Howson. But what an overall profile we're looking at here, particularly in terms of his defence, his physicality, dribblers challenged, his tackle numbers, his take-ons when he's on the ball, when he's driving, absolutely ridiculous. In the top 12% of European midfielders. So for me, I'm going to put Baleba in future superstar. I think we're probably looking at a £100 million player here. Now, whether or not that happens this summer, I'm slightly doubtful. I think he'll have another season at Brighton, and then we'll be talking about him joining a Champions League side. As for Malo Gusto, this is a difficult one. Chelsea fans, I'm interested to hear your take on Malo Gusto because I think there's a bit too much negative rhetoric around him. Some people think and have said online that he's just not good enough. Don't totally agree. Last season, we were talking about Malo Gusto as being one of the best young fullbacks in Europe. That hasn't changed in terms of his ability. What's really changed is the role. When he's being asked to invert, doesn't really suit his game. I'm going to put him in Premier League monster soon. I still have a belief that even though it's been a bit of a down campaign for Gusto, he will bounce back. Bilal El Khanous, pretty tidy. Yeah, I'm going to put him in need to see more. You know, I think he's had good moments, but didn't get an awful lot of minutes at the start of the campaign. He's had a good run under Van Nistelrooy. Romeo Lavia is a player that should be here, no doubt about that, but I just want to see more of him. We're not seeing enough Romeo Lavia because of these injury problems, and it's such a shame. He's one of the most talented young central midfielders in Europe, but he can't get onto the field because of the injury issues. Rico Lewis hasn't had the best season. Again, positionally, it's been a struggle watching him play as a right back and as a defensive midfielder without Rodri's connection. He's still the most used teenager in Pep Guardiola's managerial career, so Pep clearly trusts him, and his technical level is easy for everybody to see. On the ball, his passing ability and his actual touch and technique is amazing, but physically he does struggle playing the right back role, and without a big physical player or a player who can dominate wide spaces like Rodri alongside him, I've still got big belief in Rico Lewis's ability. I'm leaving him in the second tier. As for Mainoo, he's also had injury problems at times this year. His role has really changed. Has he been a centre mid? Has he been a 10? He's played as a striker for a game this campaign. I'm not sure Amorim has been totally convinced about his role in a double pivot. I actually kind of agree. He's better closer to goal. A lot of his best work against the likes of Liverpool, that goal against Wolves, that goal, have come in and around the box. I'm going to put him in that second tier, I think. He could be up here with his ability, but right now, I'm going to leave him there. Lewis Hall has had an amazing season. Given that last campaign, he only put up 8 Premier League starts. He's locked down that left-back position. I think he's going to be included in an England squad shortly. Really impressive. It's kind of comical that him and Tino Livramento were let go by Chelsea, isn't it? Because I do think that at least one of them will be starting right now. So strong on the ball. He's played 90% of available minutes this season for Newcastle. It's the third most minutes of any outfield player in the squad. He's so trusted by Eddie Howe. He's already a monster. Next up, we've got another fullback. It's Connor Bradley, whose profile has taken more strides forward this year. His physicality off the ball, outrageous, in the top 5% of fullbacks in Europe for his tackles. He also has an ability, which is hard to quantify, where a game needs a lift, Connor Bradley will smash into a tackle and get the whole crowd going. Not many players have that ability anymore. It used to be quite commonplace. Connor's definitely got that. I think in terms of his on-the-ball ability, it's pretty much underrated at this stage. He's in the top 5% of European fullbacks for his carries. Still needs to work on his final ball. This number could do with a bit of an improvement in terms of his shot-creating actions, but that might well come. He's never going to be Trent, but he's already the heir to the best right-back in European football, isn't he? I'm actually going to put him in future superstar. I think Connor Bradley is scary. Kerkez is going to go in Premier League monster soon too. I think him and Lewis Hall have been battling it out for the best young left back in the league for quite some time now. He has just been so consistent in that Bournemouth side. I would be surprised to see him leave the club in the summer just because he's going to cost so much money. His aggression off the ball combined with his excellent delivery make him a nightmare to play against. I love Kerkez. One thing I'm noticing here is that I'm probably going to drop Mikey Moore down to need to see more, just because he hasn't played barely at all in the Premier League. So some of the other players I've talked about not getting loads of minutes mean that I'm going to drop him down, and I'm probably going to put Lewis Miley in that category as well. The injury problems have hurt his season. He is a player that should absolutely be in this category and will be in this category, but with the limited minutes he's been able to put up this season because of injury, I want to see more of him. Chido as well hasn't really had huge impact because he's still just 17, the third youngest player in Manchester United history to play a Premier League game. Over the end of the season, he might get more minutes. Now Manchester United are pretty much safe, but for now, it is remarkable he's even getting into the squad and even getting substitute appearances. Clearly, he has a huge future. At youth level, he has been so dominant, mainly because of his physicality and his finishing ability. If you can transfer a bit of that to the senior team, boy, do we need it. Okay, so that was my tier list of every Wonderkid ranked. As you can see, the bottom tier really haven't played loads of Premier League minutes, or they've had injury problems this season, but the amount of talent in the league right now is scary. There is some superstars in the making. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Goodbye.